persists.
Melissa, I'm just going to ask you to hold on for a second. We've got breaking news. I'm going to check with my control room. I don't know if we've got pictures here, but we are following brand new breaking news out of Minneapolis. Law enforcement are responding to an incident in South Minneapolis involving federal law enforcement officers. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has just tweeted, "I spoke with the White House after another horrific shooting by federal agents. Minnesota has had it. This is sickening. The president must end this operation, pull the thousands of violent, untrained officers out of Minnesota now." MS Now's Alex Tabbitt is on the scene. We're going to get to him as soon as we can. But again, there has been a shooting in Minneapolis that is involving federal officers. We'll get more on this as we can. All right, we've got some breaking news out of Minneapolis. For those of you familiar with the city, this is in the area of Nicollet and East 26. Law enforcement are responding to an incident in South Minneapolis that is involving federal law enforcement officers. This is the scene right now. It does seem to be a shooting. We are still gathering information. This is very, very early on. The Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has tweeted, "I just spoke with the White House after another horrific shooting by federal agents this morning. Minnesota has had it. This is sickening. The president must end this operation, pull the thousands of violent, untrained officers out of Minnesota now." Again, this is we don't have a lot of information. There's a small crowd gathering, and again, it becomes very hard when you're looking at images to distinguish amongst people wearing uniforms. We did see an image a moment ago. That was a Minneapolis State Police officer. These masked folks, though, appear to be federal officers. As you can tell, they don't often have uniforms on them. Somebody just pulled out, this person right in front in the gray has pulled out a pepper spray can. You can see that in his hand. There have been pepper spray deployed. You can see that they've now formed a phalanx of some sort, which typically happens when a crowd gathers and the police are trying to keep people away from the scene. The scene has been cordoned off. You can see on the left of the screen, if the camera moves one way or the other, you'll see police tape that has been put off. That is the initial part of an investigation where they want people behind it, but you can hear the chanting of the crowd. There are protesters facing off. I think it's becoming increasingly evident that the people we're looking at in the middle of the screen right now are federal officers, whether they're DHS or ICE. They're following the protocol that those officers tend to have. They're fully masked. You can see the person in front of you has a gas mask on. The gas mask will protect that officer if he deploys what's in his hand, which is pepper spray. I can't see the hands of the other officers to know what they're doing. They do say some of their vests say police on them, but it's an important distinction. ICE officers, DHS officers are not police. They're not subject to the same rules as we've been discussing for a very long time. They're not subject to the rules, but there is a law enforcement, meaning a non-ICE and DHS response to this incident at Nicollet and East 23rd. The reporting we're getting and the word from the governor is that this is a shooting by federal officers. This is what Tim Walz has said. There's been a shooting in Minneapolis by federal officers. We don't know who's been shot. We don't know the condition of whomever has been shot. But here you can see that they're cordoning off the area. I want to just listen into this for a moment to get a sense of what's happening. All right, so the crowd is chanting at these agents. Again, these seem to be federal agents in front of us, not state police or Minneapolis State Police. And the reason you can know that is that Minneapolis State Police and Minneapolis City Police tend to wear full uniforms that identify them as such. Here you can see people with different pants, different shirts. And again, I now see at least two officers with pepper spray in their hands. You can see them in their right hands, the two in the center of the screen. Pepper spray is a very dangerous thing. Whenever there's any wind, and you can sort of see from the smoke rising, the steam rising on the left, that there is some wind in Minneapolis. Pepper spray ends up hitting a whole lot of people, including sometimes the people who spray it, which is why you're now seeing a few of these officers in front of you with gas masks. They don't seem to be doing anything about it right now, but a lot of them have pepper spray in their hands. The crowd, we're hearing, is growing in the area. I don't see the police. I don't see the scene of the shooting at the moment. I'm presuming this is behind them because that's what they're blocking the crowd from. Again, a federal shooting. Okay, now we got folks trying to move the crowd back. So it looks like the police tape has come down. They are attempting to put it back up.
You're a traitor to your country. History will not forgive you.
All right, for those of you who are just tuning in now, let me just tell you what is going on. This is the, I'm not sure exactly if this is the intersection, but this shooting has been reported to be at Nicollet and East 26th in Minneapolis. According to the governor, this is a shooting by federal officers, ICE or DHS officers. We do know that there's an actual law enforcement presence, and I make that clear that these are not law enforcement. These are federal officers of DHS or ICE. There are police from Minneapolis State Police and Minnesota State Police and Minneapolis City Police on the scene of a shooting. We do not know who's been shot. We do not know what the condition is of the person who's been shot, but there has been a shooting. Governor Walz says that he has spoken to President Trump. There is a cordoned off area. You can see police tape behind you in the distance. You can see police tape on your left, and then you can see that the tape sort of started to come down. So these officers moved in, but there are some people on this side of the tape. And the police, so these are not police. I want to be very clear. These are not police. These appear to be federal officers. They are masked, fully masked, which is typical of ICE and DHS officers. A number of them are holding pepper spray in their hands. We haven't seen any of it deployed just yet, although we have seen pepper spray and flashbang grenades and tear gas used very frequently in Minneapolis. See their right hands? You can see this officer right in front of you in his right hand. He's got pepper spray, which sounds kind of harmless. Some of you may carry it around on your person. This is a different type of pepper spray. It's actually pretty dangerous and harmful. But we're trying to figure out where the crowd control scene is here, because there's a large crowd growing, and these are not what you would typically do to control a crowd. You wouldn't put federal officers in there. So somewhere around here, Alex Tabbitt is on the scene, so he's going to get to us as soon as he can to tell us what the scene is. The crowd control tape is coming down, so these federal officers seem to be continuing to reinforce this. Again, what we are trying to understand, I've just seen a tweet now from Minneapolis Senator Amy Klobuchar. She says this: there has been another shooting involving federal agents in Minneapolis, and I'm working to get more information. I will update as soon as possible. To the Trump administration and the Republicans in Congress who have stood silent, get ICE out of our state now. Get ICE out of our state now. Amy Klobuchar posting that tweet less than 10 minutes ago. Again, what we are looking at is a sort of an increasingly tense situation between I don't know if I want to call them protesters. These are people in Minneapolis who seem to be gathering around this shooting. Clearly, this wasn't an organized event, because I don't know if anybody was expecting a shooting. But these are federal officers. Again, an important distinction to make. You'll see on their vest that says police. These are not police. These are federal officers. They are either ICE agents or Border Patrol. Both of them are playing an active role in Minneapolis. Border Patrol is sort of controlled by Tom Homan and Greg Bovino, who you've seen. In fact, you saw him deploying gas and pepper the other day, or they're ICE agents. We don't know what the nature of the confrontation was that led to this, but someone has been shot in Minneapolis at Nicollet and East 26. Let's listen in.
Every city, every town, vote ICE, shut it down. Every city, every town, vote
Obviously, there's some profanity going on, but this is the news. This is what is happening right now. The response, Minneapolis has become such a flashpoint of response by citizens or residents to this ICE presence that can sometimes feel very, very chaotic. Going back to the shooting of Renee Good more than a week and a half ago, there were reports from ICE about how that went down, and then we saw video. What you can see here is a lot of these people who are gathered have got their phones up. They are recording what's going on, which ends up being very helpful to try and get to the bottom of what's going on. ICE and DHS have often said that when there is an altercation between them or a conflict between them and someone, they have a narrative about how that all went down. We don't have any of that information. We have absolutely no idea about what has happened right now. In the early moments of a scene like this, it is chaotic. It is hard to get information. I want to report that we do have Alex Tabbitt on the scene. He's there. He's been in Minneapolis for the duration. So he's going to get in position for us fairly shortly to try and give us an understanding of what's going on. But what we know now from Governor Tim Walz and from Amy Klobuchar and from various sources on the ground, including local reporters, there has been a shooting involving ICE or federal officers. I'm going to say federal officers. I don't know. This guy actually has something on his vest that says he's a federal officer, the one in the green. But generally speaking, ICE do not identify themselves generally in their outfits. So when you see these masked officers, this probably seems to be this is either ICE or DHS. All right, we've got Alex Tabbitt is on the scene. He's going to be able to bring us up to speed on what's going on. Alex, what do you know?
Let's do that.
Hey, Allie.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex. Yep.
Hey, Allie, we're hearing the sounds of flashbangs. That sounds like pepper spray right back over there. There's about a couple dozen protesters, maybe 100 or so, who have converged on this scene here. We've heard about at least 3 flashbangs since we've arrived. Cole, if you don't mind panning over there, you can see what appears to be tear gas. Oh, you can hear some more of those flashbangs in the background. Now, protesters have set up, Cole, if you don't mind panning over there, they have set up trash cans as sort of a barrier over there as well. Allie, if you might be able to see back there. Yeah. Here, let's go for a little bit of a walk. So there's a kind of a barrier of dumpsters between what we see is police. We're a little bit far from the scene, so I cannot confirm whether it's Border Patrol, whether it's ICE in there, or whether it's Minneapolis State Police. What we've seen in the past is basically after one of these incidents, like the one that we're still learning about right now from Governor Walz, the Border Patrol or the ICE officers leave the scene, and the Minneapolis Police Department comes and tries to keep the situation under control. Let's see if we can get a little bit closer, but obviously in a safe manner. Allie, as you can see, more and more people out here, and it's impressive. It's negative 15 degrees, but people still here coming to whistle ICE, trying to hold the federal administration accountable. Cully, if you don't mind getting a little closer here. You can see over there.
You're hearing firing. What's that? Is that
there's
banging?
a scene.
People are banging on the drums.
That's
They're
banging. Yeah, those are protesters banging on the dumpster trucks. That's absolutely right. And if you can see over there, you've got police tape. That's the scene of what transpired just a few hours ago. We got a tip that something happened here about 9:15 local, and headed immediately to the scene. As you can see, it looks like that might be Minnesota State Troopers. I can't 100% confirm that though.
Well, whoever they are, they're all in a consistent uniform, which leads one to believe. We'll try and get a handle on them. They're wearing badges. They've got badges on their arms, so they are likely Minneapolis police or Minnesota State Troopers. So that seems to be a crowd control measure, right, Alex?
That exactly, Ali, exactly. I know you've got some experience in these sorts of situations, and we know that Minnesota has deployed state troopers in the last couple of weeks. Now, you can actually start to really smell the tear gas in the air right now. You can feel the anger among the demonstrators, yelling, "ICE, get out, ICE, get out." I mean, this started more than 7 weeks ago, this immigration crackdown. Of course, since then, we saw the shooting and killing of Renee Good. We saw the shooting of another person who the Trump administration says was an undocumented immigrant. And today, we might be seeing another situation unfold. Of course, there's so much still that we need to learn. What we do know for sure is that the people of Minnesota are angry. They're angry. They came out in the thousands yesterday to protest. They're coming out in the hundreds right now to the scene of this situation, despite the fact that it's negative 15 degrees, frostbite temperatures. We still have so much to learn, but people here are very, very upset, Ali.
And we had some imagery a few moments ago of what were not Minneapolis State Police. This imagery that we're running on the screen right now, you probably can't see this. Those appear to be federal officers. They're ICE officers. Where are you in relation to where those officers might be? I can see behind you are what we look at. We're seeing it might be Minneapolis or Minnesota State Police, but where is the incident relative to where you are?
I believe we are on the other side of the street. So basically the police or the law enforcement have separated the scene into two halves, and it's very difficult to get from one half to the other half. Now, what I will say is, having covered Renee Good's shooting, there is a kind of a transitionary period during which the state and local law enforcement and the federal agents are both on the scene. But what typically happens is that the federal agents, whether that be ICE, whether that be CBP, they try to leave the scene as soon as possible, because that is where the tension is coming from between the demonstrators and the federal agents. Ali?
Alex, stand by for a second. I have some video to show you now. I have to warn you, this is graphic. It is very hard to tell what exactly is happening in the video that I'm about to show you. We don't know what happened before the video was taken. This video is graphic. Let me show you what we've got.
They're doing too much, man, and they keep pushing people, you know?
What you hear at the end of that appear to be gunshots. Senator Tina Smith has just posted another catastrophic shooting in Minneapolis by federal agents. We're gathering more information, but ICE must leave now so Minneapolis Police Department can secure the scene and do their job. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty has posted, we're aware of reports of a federal agent having shot an individual in Minneapolis this morning. We are working with the BCA to coordinate a state response. Senator Amy Klobuchar has tweeted, there's been another shooting involving federal agents in Minneapolis. I'm working to get more information. I will update as soon as possible. To the Trump administration and the Republicans in Congress who have stood silent, get ICE out of our state now. I'm going to just grab the tweet from Tim Walz as well, who has said that he has spoken with the president and that ICE needs to get out of the state now. Alex Tabbitt was pointing out that typically after a shooting like this, they want to get law enforcement in. Okay, so let's just listen in. Something's going on here.
Back up! Hey!
You're seeing somebody being dragged away there. The shots you were hearing, you saw shots and then you immediately saw this tear gas. That is tear gas. That's not pepper spray. You're also, the loud sound suggests that it could be a combination of tear gas or flashbang grenades. You are seeing photographers. You're seeing officers tell people to get out of the way. Now you see, look right in front of you. Look at those are all officers with their weapons raised. We do not know whether that's those are live fire weapons or tear gas, but you are hearing tear gas and flashbangs go off. I want to stay with this scene. You're watching this is going on in Minneapolis right now, about an hour and a bit after a reported shooting, which we just showed you video of. Let's just listen in. Protesters and the ICE officers or ICE or CBP officers, again, it's impossible to tell, and I'm sorry for that, but if ICE and CBP would actually wear uniforms, we would be able to tell you who they are. There are uniformed police in the area, where they may be Minneapolis State Police, they may be Minneapolis Police Department or Minnesota State Police, but at this point there seems to be some ongoing confrontation between ICE officers and protesters. This is tear gas you're looking at. We did see the officers, look at this guy has his gun out of his holster. We did see ICE officers or CBP officers with pepper spray in their hands. This is not pepper spray. We have heard explosions. Those are most likely tear gas or flashbang grenades. Flashbang grenades are very, very loud, very bright images that are meant to sort of blind you and sort of take your hearing away for a few moments. They can be very, very dangerous. They can damage your hearing and sight permanently. But when you heard the shooting, you immediately saw smoke, which suggests that that's tear gas. You heard people coughing, which again suggests that it's tear gas. This confrontation is clearly not under control. It's not over. Again, these do not appear to be Minneapolis police or Minnesota State Police. These appear to be federal officers. Most of them are masked. Some of them have gas masks. Some of them have long guns on them. One we just saw moments ago pull out his handgun and then holster it again. And we are seeing these interactions go on. Alex Tabbitt is on the other side of this. The way they've done this is they've split the scene. So if you're on one side of it, you're some distance from the other side of it, and it does look like ICE is having trouble getting control of the scene, which is not atypical because this isn't actually what they're trained to do under any circumstances. Remember, this is Immigration and Customs Enforcement. This is not their work. And they seem to be having great difficulty getting this under control. They have protesters who are out there screaming for them to get out of Minneapolis. And by the way, that is a view that is shared by Minneapolis police, by Minnesota state officials, by Tim Walz, who has said, I've just spoken with the White House after another horrific shooting by federal agents this morning. Minnesota has had it. This is sickening. The president must end this operation, pull the thousands of violent, untrained officers out of Minnesota. Now I've read you posts from Senator Amy Klobuchar, from Senator Tina Smith, from the Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty. This is a developing situation. We're going to stay on this now for a little while.
It's like Call of Duty. So cool, huh?
Did you shoot it? Did you shoot? Take the shot. If they kick it, you take the shot. Load up. Load up.
It just blows that way. Fucking idiots. Look at that. It's doing nothing.
You gotta go. I'm trying to help you out. I'm trying to help you out. Go. about to readvance in route to your location, 15 miles south, 1-5, how copy? Yes, copy.
Okay, I've got new news now. The police chief, the Minnesota police chief, has told the Minneapolis Star-Tribune that the person who was shot has died. Another officer-involved shooting, federal agent shooting in Minneapolis, in which someone has died. We do not know what led to that shooting. We did show you video, which I will show you again in a few moments. It's just we have a pretty dynamic situation here, so I want to just stay on it. You've got federal officers and protesters facing off. The federal officers, you can see various images of them. Some of them have long guns. Many of those long guns that you saw being shot are canister weapons. In other words, they've got tear gas in them or flashbangs. You can see pepper spray. Okay, now police are moving toward the crowd.
Okay, thank you. All right, you don't need to push me. All right, stay back. All right, hey, stay back. Good. You don't need to push me, okay? Okay.
That's the weapon I'm describing. That's a canister of some sort. Typically, it's tear gas. You can see there's a lot of tear gas in the environment right now. The federal officers have now all put on masks. A little while ago, just a few of them had masks on. Now they're all masked. Watch this one here, preparing to fire a canister. You can fire one canister out of those weapons at a time, then you have to reload. So you'll notice that when they shoot them, they immediately reload. It's a windy day, so the gas is blowing back on the officers, but they are all masked. So they're unaffected by it. There is a tape, and generally speaking, in a crowd control or law enforcement situation, the tape is the barrier beyond which you're not supposed to go. But now we've seen the federal officers crossing the tape and pushing people further than that, which is generally speaking not an infringement on the law if you're not interfering with an enforcement operation. We don't know what happened here. We do have video, and again, I will show it to you. It is terribly graphic, in which you see some sort of a scuffle involving federal officers and someone, and then you hear multiple shots. You can see it. Someone has been shot. That person who has been shot, according to the Minneapolis police chief, has died. So this is the second time now in a few weeks in which someone has been shot involving federal officers. Once again, these federal officers that you see in front of you, you can generally tell they're federal officers because these days the proof is in the negative. They don't have badges to indicate who they are. You saw people holding up their cameras and recording and asking these people, what's your name and badge number, and not getting a response. There you go. That's a tear gas canister that was fired. Most of these officers, this is a tear gas gun. The man with his gun up, that is not a tear gas weapon. That is a live fire weapon. We have not seen that used this morning. Those generally have bullets in them. Generally speaking, this guy on the left has a live fire weapon. He's pointing it downward. The other one was pointing it upward. The ones you're seeing, the short-nosed weapons, are for flashbang grenades or for tear gas. You can see an officer throwing a grenade there. Then you hear it explode. So you saw him throw it. You saw it explode. That is meant to disorient protesters. The bang is very, very loud. The flash is very, very bright. You generally can't look at it. So you've got to sort of get out of the vicinity. Your hearing is usually disrupted for a little while. So the situation between the protesters and the federal officers seems to have settled for the moment. But as you can see, this continues to be a dynamic situation. The protesters were a little out of the shot at this point. Alex Tabbitt was around some of them. They've taken these dumpsters and garbage bins, turned them on their side to sort of impede the movement of the federal officers. There is a local police presence on the scene. It's just not on this camera, so we can't see them. We saw them on Alex Tabbitt's camera. Those are, we believe, Minneapolis police or Minnesota State Police. They are properly uniformed, as we would like our police to be. These people who are not properly uniformed are probably CBP and ICE. Some of them have badges on that suggest they're CBP, but you'll notice, unlike most police, they're not wearing identifying features. Alex Tabbitt is very, very close to the scene. He's just at a different angle. Alex, since you started telling us that we were hearing grenades, we saw a lot more kinetic activity, a lot more tear gas. We've seen flashbangs. What's happening where you are?
That's absolutely right. We can hear them very nearby the vicinity. What's happening over here on this side of the scene, Cully, if you could come along here, is protesters are chanting expletive ICE. They're saying, "We keep us safe." They've made, as we noted, a barrier of trash cans. There's a mattress to kind of separate the demonstrators from the scene of the crime. You can really smell the irritants in the air, even though it happened on the other side of the scene here. Oh, you just heard another flashbang. It's over there, Cully, if you want to show. You can see the smoke right now in the air. It looks like there's some sort of clash between the federal agents and the demonstrators happening over there. Looks like some people are heading towards that smoke. And then if you look on the other side as well here, Allie, there's even more dumpsters, even more barricades as protesters gear up to be here for a long time, to voice their displeasure, to voice their frustration after yet another person has been shot and killed by a federal agent. We're going to move back, Allie, because it is really picking up the amount.
Yeah, I want you to stay, you and your crew to stay safe. You're talking about these irritants. There is some wind in the air. We know that there are, we saw canisters of pepper spray. The shooting can be tear gas or pepper balls. What are you sensing? Are you feeling it? You say you can smell it. Now people are moving towards you pretty fast. What's going on there?
Yeah, as you can see, there's a huge plume of smoke towards our right. So it's, oh wow.
You're feeling it. That sounds like pepper to me. Yeah.
People are starting. Yeah, people are starting to move quite quickly out of the scene because it's getting quite uncomfortable. So I want to make sure our team is all safe here. But yeah, it's certainly escalated. I mean, now if you want to, I mean, it's completely engulfed in smoke, in chemical irritant. You can feel it in your throat, you can feel it in your eyes, and people who were of the scene have now completely converged. Oh, look. There appears to be what looks like, I don't know how to identify that properly.
Caltrops. We got spikes on the ground. Yeah.
So yes, obviously an escalation of the tension here, an escalation of the non-lethal weapons in the area, and we have pulled quite far back, as have at least a couple dozen, if not a couple hundred protesters on this side of the scene. Now,
yeah, I saw somebody just on the right of this camera pouring sort of water into their eyes, which, if it's pepper, it could help. It often doesn't, because the idea of pepper spray and tear gas is that they stick around for a while. We're seeing it blow. What we do know, Alex, you probably have this information. We're going to hear from the mayor within the hour, probably in about 40 minutes or so. All the officials are saying that this was an officer or an officer-involved, federal agent-involved shooting, and the chief of police has said that the person who was shot has died. Are you getting that information on the ground?
That's what I've heard from my sources, but of course we have not fully 100% confirmed that ourselves. What's also interesting is that the commander of the Border Patrol, Greg Bovino, and Marcos Charles, one of the leaders of ICE, were slated to have given a press conference at 11 local. Let me check my watch here. I lost the track of time,
it's
but
almost,
that should be coming up.
Yeah, it's 6 minutes away. Yeah.
Yeah. So that should be coming up any moment now. If that press conference is still on, given this recent development, they are sure to either address or be asked a question about this developing situation. But what I will say is what you have heard matches what my sources, which are ICE observers, which are people who are doing the very same work that Renee and Nicola Good was doing when she lost her life, have told me for hours now. But of course, we need to wait for the official confirmation.
Let me ask you this, and again, Alex, I know the situation you're in, so there may be questions I have that you don't have answers to, and that's entirely okay. Do we know, was this the work of ICE Observer? Were they already there for something, or is this crowd that's gathered around you there in response to the fact that there was a shooting, or do you not know?
So this is in response to not necessarily just a shooting, but also whenever there is a raid. So as you know, there's Signal group chats, there's WhatsApp group chats. This community is mobilized so that whenever there is word that ICE is in the area, people head to the scene to try to blow whistles, to honk horns, to keep undocumented community members safe, community members of color who are worried about getting racially profiled safe. But then what happens is when there's word that gunfire has erupted at the scene, more and more people arrive to voice their displeasure, their frustration, and their anger, quite frankly, with the Trump administration, who has basically laid siege on the state of Minnesota for 6-7 weeks now. It was federal agents, and now what? Fatal shooting here in Minneapolis. Allie?
Alex, give me a situation where you are in terms of the cloud of smoke. We saw that is tear gas. That amount of smoke is always tear gas. It's windy. It was blowing your way. Looks like it's cleared up a little bit. How is that affecting the movement of the protesters?
Absolutely right, Ali. The tear gas has appeared to have dissipated, and that means that the protesters have returned to this kind of barricade that they've created. You see people waving flags, rather. One red flag, another what appears to be a pirate flag, and the continuing of the banging of these dumpster trucks as people here want to send the message to the federal agents, ICE, get out of our city. That is the chant probably that I've heard the most. ICE out, ICE out. And I suspect we'll be hearing a lot more of those chants throughout this morning and afternoon, Allie.
Yeah, and I want to bring our viewers up to speed with what we are hearing from city and state officials. First of all, at 12:40 Eastern, 40 minutes from now, we are going to hear, we got another situation here. Let's just listen in for a moment.
No! Fuck you! Stop! Look out! Damn! Just chill. Okay. I'm fine. I don't even breathe anything. I'm just angry. I'm 7 years old. Fucking angry. Oh, fuck off. I don't think I'll need it, but we'll try it.
Wow. What a scene in an American city in 2026 in Minneapolis. We have confirmation now from the governor, from the chief of the Minneapolis Police Department to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune that the person who was shot by federal agents has died. This will now be the second shooting death by federal agents in Minneapolis. We have a lot of responses from various people. Again, I want to stay very close to this scene. I'm going to tell you all what's happened. To those of you who are joining, I'm going to tell you what this scene is. We are at around Nicollet and East 26th in Minneapolis, in which there has been another shooting that has resulted in a death. Moments ago, the Minneapolis police chief, as I said, Brian O'Hara, you've seen him probably a few times in the last few weeks, he did tell the Minneapolis Star-Tribune that the man who was shot by federal officers has died. I'll show you the video, unfortunately, of this in a few moments. A crowd has gathered around the site of the shooting, which is the, 26th Street West and Nicollet Avenue. I said East, I meant West. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey said he'll hold a briefing about 40 minutes from now, 30 minutes from now. We will, of course, bring you that. We have video of the shooting. Now, this is all hard to watch. This is unbelievable that this is an American city in 2026, and this is federal agents versus the residents of that city. I'm going to show you this video, and I normally say don't look away because you can't look away in moments like this. I have to tell you, this is really graphic. It's hard to tell what exactly is happening in the video, and we don't know what happened leading up to it. I'm going to hold off on that video for a second. I just want to keep an eye on what's going on here. All right. We now have protesters coming up closer to these federal officers. But for a moment, let me just, again, I'm going to warn you, this is really, really graphic. Here's the video that seems to be the precipitating event to all of this.
They're doing too much, man, and they keep pushing people, you know?
I counted 5 shots that I heard, but again, we don't know, and we're not forensicists, and there's stuff we may not have seen on that video. We don't know why this person was shot, but they are dead. Joining me now is Rob D'Amico. He's MS Now's national security and law enforcement analyst, and Tom Manger, MS Now law enforcement analyst. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. And again, you all know better than I do that we cannot make determinations based on one piece of video. But not what we're looking at right now, but the video that I just showed the viewers. Rob, let me start with you. What were you able to see through your sort of experienced eyes?
Well, when your folks first sent it to me, I actually thought it was AI because it was so bad. I mean, that's my initial reaction was the restraint training's awful. When you have a person that's down, that's trying to resist getting handcuffed, you have to control the limbs, the hands being the most important and the most dangerous. You have one guy just kind of like throwing punches in there, which doesn't do that. When you have multiple people on one person, you get one person on each arm, and then you have someone sitting on the feet or controlling the feet so they don't kick someone, and then someone is designated to be on the handcuffs to get a handcuff on one arm to force it to the other one. I was trying to look at the victim in this point. When he's on the ground, I'm trying to see what his hands are doing because that's the most important thing. And at one point he's on all fours, so you can see his hands. From what I could see, there was no weapon in them. Now, when he goes down and people get on top of him, what I don't understand is what did he do with his hands? If his hands went into his like belly area and someone thought maybe he was going for a gun, that could force deadly force. But also before that even happened, I saw one officer that had his weapon out. And I've been in a numerous arrests like this where someone's resisting to get handcuffed. If they don't have a weapon, I absolutely do not draw my weapon. Like you put it in a safe spot, and when you go into the person, you make sure that your weapon in its holster is facing away from them, and that's where all the training comes in. We train like that in FBI Academy all the time of people that aren't armed that you're trying to handcuff that are resisting. It can be tough, but you do have to go through that. You have to really control, again, the arms first, the legs second. You designate someone to be on handcuffs to get that handcuff on one, or if you have flex cuffs. But some of the tactics that I was seeing were just horrific, where I thought the video was fake. And then when the gunshots rang out, I could not determine from that group who shot first. I saw after it looked like 2 agents were shooting into actually a victim that wasn't even moving on the ground. So I think when people see this, as you said, it's actually more, it's worse than the shooting before, in my eyes. But again, until we start understanding what happened before, what was he wanted for, what was he being detained for, and then when he was on the ground, what were his hands doing? Did someone think he was going for a gun in his clothing or something like that? Really is going to determine how this looks. But again, I think when this hits the regular media, the protests that you see will actually intensify.
Tom, so DHS, we're getting very little information all around, but DHS says, and this is important based on what we were just talking about. I just want to hold for a second, see what's going on here. We got a lot of photographers and a lot of ICE officials. All right, they're retreating now. The officials seem to have moved forward. The officers now they're going back to their original position. Tom, the DHS says the man who was shot, who we now know has died, was armed. So let's pick up the narrative from what Rob was saying. We see this video. If you take DHS's word that he was armed, help me make sense of what you saw in the video.
So whenever you are in close quarters like that, the officers are trained to put a high priority on weapon retention. When you are wrestling with someone, you not only have to try and get them under control, you have to make sure that you're in control of your weapon at all times. Most holsters nowadays are constructed so that it's very difficult to pull a weapon out of someone's holster. You usually have to make a couple of movements to get it out. In the old days, when Rob and I started, I mean, you had it was much easier. You had it was snapped in, and you could pull the gun right out. So weapon retention, making sure you always have control of your weapon, even when you are in close quarters with wrestling with someone, tremendously important. So there's two things here. Either this individual may have had a weapon concealed on their person, and as the ICE folks were wrestling with him, again, they would try to keep control of his hands so that he couldn't put his hands in his pockets or anywhere where there might be a weapon. That if you can control the hands, that's one of the most important things when you're wrestling with someone trying to get them into custody. Or there's always the possibility that, and this has happened so many times where it's ended up involved in an officer-involved shooting, where an individual is going for an officer's weapon. They've got their hand on the weapon, they're pulling it, trying to pull it out of the holster. And there you have what can be a deadly force situation, because if the individual gets it out and starts shooting, that's obviously too late. You can't allow that individual to get possession of a weapon. And looking at that video, we don't know what that was in that individual's hands. We don't know if they were able to get a weapon from one of the officers. It didn't appear, but it's too tough to tell. It was too far away, and there were too many people blocking what the suspect was doing. So this is one of those situations that, unfortunately, ICE has in past cases has given out information that was inaccurate. So we hope that whatever they say is actually accurate and factual. But at this point, it's tough for anybody outside of the officers involved to know really what happened.
Yeah, we're gonna try and break that video down for you. We're looking at it, but again, this is not a forensic examination, right? We can only see what we can see, and both of you are pointing out that there may be things we can't see. What we do know, though, and Rob, we have had this. We've had the political folks in there saying, meaning the two senators, the governor, now the governor of Illinois, where they've got ICE, ICE and DHS presence there, all saying that a situation which is supposed to be immigration enforcement isn't supposed to end up like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough to understand what was going on beforehand. And as Tom talked about, the lead up to this is important in the facts of what's going on.
And just to be very clear and very transparent, we don't have any video about the lead up to it. We don't know. No. We only saw the video of the scuffle on the sidewalk. We don't know what led up to it. So I just want to underscore that. We don't know, so we don't know.
Yep. So one important thing is the video is from inside, so you can't hear what the ICE officers are saying, because I would like to see an outside video, because normally when you're in a fight like that, you're trying to restrain someone, you do have someone standing off with the weapon just in case a weapon gets involved, but you don't want them close to the scene so that the person who's fighting can get a hold of that. But what you normally hear is, as soon as you're doing in that crumb of people, if someone sees the subject have a gun, they will yell gun, and that alerts everybody, because you're not yelling a gun for obviously a law enforcement agent having one. But if someone sees that the subject has a weapon, they're going to yell gun. And that may have been yelled. Again, we're watching a video from inside, so you couldn't hear some of the commands or what was going on between the ICE agents and the subject. But it becomes a point where if they see a gun and yell a gun, that tells everyone to back away, and the person that is on, covering down on the subject with a gun may engage them. It was so hard to see, and I really and I slowed it down. I put it on slow-mo. I tried to slow it down to hear that first shot come out, and I could not see the ICE agent, any of the ICE agents around him, in a position to take the shot when the sound came out. Again, you couldn't see all of them. And then you could see that the ICE agents were absolutely surprised when the round went off, because the ones closest to it kind of jumped back and had some facial reactions that they didn't understand what was going on either. And then you saw two agents that were standing back, drawn and firing into the subject. So it is really tough to tell. If there's more video that comes out, I think if it's on the street, you're going to start hearing the interaction between the subject and the law enforcement agents, and that may give more information what was going on between them, especially if you hear gun. If you hear gun being yelled, that's normally the subject of the arrest somehow has a weapon. It could have been obviously an ICE agent. If it was, as Tom talked about, the holsters now are made so that if you're not drawing perfectly from where the person wearing the gun drawing it, it's really hard to get the gun out. But if the gun's out, obviously the subject can get that too. So I think we're going to need a lot more information. I think they really have to document this. If this in fact was the case that the subject of arrest had a weapon and fired the weapon, I think because of what Tom talked about on certain things not coming true that were put out, that they really need to document that and show that to the public and say, here is the evidence that we're seeing right now that shows it. But I hopefully, we don't have everyone jumping to a conclusion without an investigation going on like happened on the last one.
Yeah, and that's, I just keep wanting to underscore this. What we do know is that there's been another person who has been shot by federal people in Minneapolis, but that's the only piece of information we actually know at the moment. The other part of this is what you're looking at now is an ongoing confrontation between protesters and the federal agents. Alex Tabbitt is there. He's not in the same location as exactly this. He's a few blocks away because that's just the nature of how they close off the areas where these things happen. He's where there are more protesters, but you could see the tear gas. At moments, you see the screen go completely white. That's tear gas. Earlier, you didn't see the federal officers wearing their gas masks. You saw them wearing the masks that they always wear. Then you saw them wearing gas masks. In many cases, we saw them with pepper spray in their hands, but then we saw guns that can neither be used. Some of the guns are pepper guns, and some of them are tear gas guns. We also see flashbang grenades that are going on, and there's a constant skirmish now going on. You can see somebody here who seems to be handcuffed, who's being walked by these federal agents. Again, this is a very hard situation to get context in. We know someone's been shot and killed by federal officers. We know that tensions are very high between people in Minneapolis and the federal government and the CBP and ICE officers who are on the ground. We do know that the only way you can sort of tell CBP and ICE officers these days is by virtue of the fact that they don't tend to wear a lot of identifying stuff on them. They do have, in many cases, vests that say police. It's important to distinguish that they're not trained as police. They are not trained in crowd control. Sadly, Minneapolis police and Minnesota State Police have learned a lot more about crowd control in the last 4 or 5 years. Tom, I just want to ask you, because as the former chief of the Capitol Police, your people are trained in crowd control, and you are trained in what you do if let me just see what's going on here. Somebody else is being handcuffed by these federal officers. All right, we don't know what that is. Tom, just tell me about that, because I think it's pretty clear to everybody that the federal officers are not good at the crowd control thing. But when you as Capitol Police Chief, you had to deal with the idea that someone might be there, might be armed, might need to be restrained. What does protocol dictate?
So we usually had warning ahead of time or some notification ahead of time that we were going to have a large protest that had the possibility for violence. And so just the way we set it up, I mean, the ICE agents here are putting yellow tape, tying it from tree to tree or to a car to block off protesters. Okay. And it really isn't a barrier that is helping the law enforcement or ICE maintain control of a scene. And so, and then you also have to have enough people there so that you can deter the crowd from trying to interfere with the scene. And I think this is what, the best I can determine, this is what ICE is trying to do. They've got a shooting scene, which is now a crime scene, that has to be investigated, has to be processed. They have to have forensic evidence. It takes hours to do that, to collect evidence. You don't want anything to interfere with that. So they've got to keep these folks away. And it just seems like there doesn't seem to be enough ICE agents there, because there are thousands of protests. There were thousands yesterday that were in Minneapolis. I think there are probably just more and more people who are showing up, and it's getting more and more challenging for them to keep control of that crowd. The other thing is that once you lose your legitimacy with the public, once the public thinks you're not fair, you're not playing by the rules, you're not policing in our best interest, that sets up a situation where the crowd is angry at you. The good news when I was with the Capitol Police, we typically were at demonstrations that had to do with the war in Gaza, abortion, immigration, things that really got folks stirred up. When the protesters showed up, the Capitol Police weren't the enemy.
Right.
So the way we treated them and the way we dealt with them typically did not escalate the situation. Here we have something that has continued to escalate over the past several weeks, and it's not going to get any better. And this is where you've got this test of wills, this war of wills between thousands of members of the public who are demonstrating against what ICE is trying to do. The administration keeps sending more and more ICE agents in. It's just going to escalate. At some point, someone is going to have to make the decision that we've got to de-escalate this. We've got to tamp it down. We've got to stop for a minute. Pause.
Hey, Todd, let me stop you for 1 second. I want to go to Alex Tabbitt. There is a fire burning now in the background. Alex, what do you got there?
That's absolutely right, Ali. That's where we just were, down the block, where we saw those protesters set up that barricade. Now we're seeing plumes and plumes of dark smoke. Holly, if you can zoom in there so that the viewers at home can see. It looks like the demonstrators have set up some sort of a fire, although we are not there, so we cannot see exactly who lit the fire, but that would be our assumption, given that's where we just were. And over here, Cully, if you don't mind zooming in over there, you can see what appears to be the federal agents in a standoff with the protesters. Those are different than the agent or the state troopers that we believe to have been seeing a block away. This looks like federal agents who are all wearing gas masks in case this situation intensifies. Ali?
Yeah, and you saw earlier, you were showing us shots of police who were uniformed, had badges, had identifying badges on them. And so unfortunately, that's the way you can now distinguish whether someone's Minneapolis State Police, Minnesota State Police, or Minneapolis Police versus the federal officers. We're going to keep a close eye on that. Alice, we're going to come back to you in a few moments. We're going to take a quick break. We're expecting to hear from the mayor of Minneapolis very shortly, Jacob Fry. We're going to stay very, very close to this situation. We do have comments from all of the elected officials about what's going on. DHS, by the way, did say that the person who was shot, who we do know has died, was armed. Now, we don't know what that means. Again, we don't have enough detail. We don't know whether it was their gun that they had on them or whether they got one of the guns of the ICE officers. We don't know. I want to just keep underscoring, we don't know what we don't know. We can only see what we can see. We're going to try and break down that video as much as we can to find out what happened. We've got this live video. We've got Alex Tabbitt on the scene, and we've got a number of experts with us. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with this continuing breaking news situation in Minneapolis, where another person has been shot by federal agents and has died.
Go make your community better!
I'm sorry that I have to keep doing this, but we have breaking news. We have another person who has been shot in Minneapolis by a federal agent. That person has died. The Department of Homeland Security has said that the person was armed. Again, that's all the detail we've got from them. We are expecting to hear from the mayor in a few moments. What you're looking at now is a situation around the area of about West 26th, 27th, and Nicollet, if you're familiar with Minneapolis. These are federal agents you're looking at in front of us, some combination of DHS or ICE. Again, they don't identify themselves, so it's very hard to tell. There are protesters. This has been sort of a running situation between police and protesters. They've been firing pepper balls and flashbang grenades and tear gas into the air. That's why they're all wearing masks right now. They weren't wearing masks earlier. We do have video of the scuffle. I won't show you this right now, which ended up in the person's death, because it is A, it's hard to watch. B, I want to be very accurate as to what we know and what we don't know about this. We've got Alex Tabbitt on the scene in Minneapolis. This is not his camera. He's in a slightly different position where the protesters are. There does seem to be, we saw smoke from some sort of a fire. We don't know what it is. We don't know if it's structure on fire or it could just be a barrel fire, like one of those bonfire type of things, because they produce a lot of smoke. But there's a lot of tension between protesters on the street and ICE officers. That's been going on for some time. That's not new, but now that someone else is dead, it has escalated. Senator Tina Smith of Minnesota has said another catastrophic shooting in Minneapolis by federal agents. We're gathering more information, but ICE must leave now so Minneapolis Police Department can secure the scene and do their jobs. The Hennepin County, Minneapolis is part of Hennepin County. The county attorney there, who's like the DA, Mary Moriarty, says we're aware of reports of a federal agent having shot an individual in Minneapolis this morning. We're working with the BCA to continue to coordinate a state response. Remember, these are federal officers on the right. This is not the state. Amy Klobuchar, senator of Minneapolis, has said there's been another shooting involving federal agents in Minneapolis, and I'm working to get more information. I'll update as soon as possible. To the Trump administration and the Republicans in Congress who have stood silent, get ICE out of our state now. The governor, Tim Walz of Minneapolis, has tweeted, I just spoke with the White House after another horrific shooting by federal agents this morning. Minnesota has had it. This is sickening. The president must end this operation. Pull the thousands of violent, untrained officers out of Minnesota now. In Chicago, which has had a presence of federal officers and ICE agents and customs officials, Governor Pritzker has put out a statement in which he has said masked federal agents in Minnesota just shot and killed another person. We must put a stop to Trump's ICE now. Stop the funding, stop the occupation, stop the killing. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune spoke to the chief of police in Minneapolis, who has said that's where we're getting the confirmation that the subject of the shooting has died. I've got people standing by. I've got Alex Tabbitt on the ground. Moments from now, we're going to hear, we think, maybe it's the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to hear from the mayor of Minneapolis, who has said very clearly after the last shooting, after the shooting of Renee Good, he used some pretty colorful language telling ICE to get out of Minneapolis. We're going to be showing you a lot of live pictures, and there's a lot of swearing going on, I will tell you this, but we're in a moment now where it's not my job to censor that for you. David Rode has been standing by, as he always is, and getting as much information as he can. David, I'm going to stay on the pictures on the screen, but tell me what you've been seeing and hearing.
We're all trying to find out everything we can. Our colleagues, Carol Lenig and Ken Delaney, have talked to various current law enforcement officials. I've talked to some former ones. The most important thing here is for this to be a thorough and eventually an independent investigation. What the law enforcement sources are saying, they'd like to see other videos from other angles about what happened here. It's very significant that DHS is saying the individual who died was armed. But the issue here is that many people don't believe DHS, and that's what leads to the importance for a transparent.
And again, we don't know who's right or not right here.
Exactly.
But we have run into things where DHS has said X has happened, and then we've seen 4 videos that suggest Y happened.
And this moment, as we watch the anger here, it's critical in this press conference, and this just gets back, and we're biased as journalists, but these officials need to speak.
We're seeing flashbang grenades being shot into the crowd to push them back as they got closer to the to the ICE and CBP. Again, I don't know whether they're ICE or CBP because they don't identify. They're now moving into the crowd. These short snub guns that they're using are usually used to fire pepper balls or tear gas. We have seen Alex Tabbitt's on the ground. He said there's both pepper in the air and tear gas in the air. When this started, we saw the ICE officials. This is all tear gas you're looking at right now, or smoke. We didn't see them having masks on. They're all masked. They are now moving at some pace toward that crowd. This has been sort of a moving protest. They're moving well out of the area that they've been stationed in all morning now. They look to be at least a block away. You can see people running. I want to just stay on this for 1 second to see where this is going.
I'm a United States citizen! If you kill me on the street! Stay on the sidewalk. You're gonna kill me! That's what you want? You want to kill me? You want to kill me on the street? You're gonna have to fucking kill me! I have done nothing wrong!
You can hear a man that they're holding down on the street saying, "I've done nothing wrong." He's saying his name. These are, as Alex Tabbitt was describing, some of these are sort of practiced things where people learn what they're supposed to do if they come into contact with these federal officers. They try and record as much as they can, and they say certain things. Now, what's going on here?
Let it out.
What a scene, Minneapolis. Minneapolis in 2026. David Rode, you were saying the difficulty in understanding what really happened is exacerbated by the fact that people don't necessarily believe what DHS is saying. Let's listen to what this woman is saying.
What's your husband's name?
His name is
Matthew James Obadiah Allen. Write that down. Matthew James, we're not going to let him get lost. He's looking at me. It's going to be fine. Matthew James Obadiah Allen. Matthew James Obadiah Allen. You're writing it down? Thank you. I'm just going to keep saying it. What's your name? You know what he would want? What's your fucking name? So I'm going to track him in the system. I'm going to make sure he's going to be fine. I'm going to make sure he's going to be fine. What do you want to get you? Let's get you inside.
David, what Tom Manger was saying to us moments ago was that when he was the chief of the Capitol Police, there would be demonstrations about all sorts of things, whether it was abortion or Israel, Gaza. But the demonstrators didn't see the Capitol Police as being on the other side of it. Now, we have seen issues, including in Minneapolis, where the citizenry and the police were at odds with each other. But this is the complicating factor here. This isn't the public mad about something and the police in between. This is the public mad at these officers, these federal officers.
Correct, and it's the distrust of the federal government in the wake of the Renee Good shooting and killing. The key thing here is for public officials to try to bring down the temperature and make factual statements about what's known and what's not known. We've seen this over and over in shootings. I mean, the hours after Charlie Kirk was killed, other incidents. And it's critical right now how these local officials respond, and to be frank, the Trump administration responds. And this is a moment for an independent investigation that I would suggest
But
involves local law enforcement.
This is what the Hennepin County attorney is saying. We want to have a state response, but after the Rene Good killing, one of the first things we heard is the feds saying state has no role in this thing.
Correct. It was the feds. It was Vice President Vance. It was Secretary Noem from DHS. So you don't want a situation like this to spiral out of control. People are seeing these images, on their televisions across the country and in Minneapolis. You don't want more people flooding into Minneapolis. You don't want more violence and injuries and God forbid, deaths. So, we'll see what's happening with this poor woman and then see what the local officials have to say.
I'm trying to understand what it is she was talking about, because there was a name that she gave, and the man asked for a name. Looks like a clergyman next to her. By the way, there's been a lot of clergy in fact, there's a guy right behind him with a vest on that says chaplain. The clergy's been very, very involved. Interfaith, by the way, Christians, Jews, Muslims. They've been there this week, sort of standing with the people of Minneapolis. I'm very cautious to not use the word citizens anymore, because it's not actually about citizens. It's about everybody in Minneapolis. They are outraged in that city with the federal response. And I am a little, Rob D'Amico, I have to ask you this. Minneapolis was ground zero for a lot of the stuff that happened in the last several years with the Black Lives Matter protests. And sometimes they handled it well, and sometimes they didn't handle it well. But this is not the remit of federal officers. So I'm kind of curious, as I look at my screen, to understand, why is a standoff continuing between federal officers and people in Minneapolis? Why are these federal officers not out of the scene, letting MPD or Minneapolis or Minnesota State Police handle this?
I don't know the exact specifics. I do know, like, around the shooting, it's a crime scene now that they have to protect it. They have to protect it in order to come in and have whatever federal agency, last time was FBI, to do the initial investigation there, that they have to hold down. But I would normally see, like you said, where the local police come in and take over the protester type of thing. And as Chief Tom said, it's a big difference when the protesters are mad at the people who are actually now around the protesters. And that is a big difference, because, like, Capitol Police, they see him as a neutral party just trying to hold the line and the law enforcement part of it, but they're not mad at him. And this is more inflammatory when the protesters are mad at the ones that are trying to control the crowds, and the fact they don't have crowd control training. I mean, normally when you see, like, police, like when you were showing earlier and how they were deploying the tear gas, and then all of a sudden you saw a live, a bullet weapon, we'll call it, that was amongst that. Normally when you see, like, police and anti-protest gear, the first wave has all the glass shields to protect them and the helmets on and all the appropriate things. You don't see live weapons out. You may see them back further in case someone does bring a weapon out that's needed, but they're not on that front line. There's not a mix between it. It's one thing, to have those people in amongst themselves, but they don't have the training for it. It's one of those things that FBI agents aren't trained in crowd control, ICE and other federal agents aren't, and there are ways to do it. NYPD is a great one. LAPD knows how to do it, and they go through training probably on a monthly basis, and they're used to getting things thrown at them and spit at and all these other things, and they understand that if they remain calm, it actually helps others to remain calm, and they have to do it that way. And then when they do have to arrest people, you'll see how they do it. They surround them, and then they protect the outer barrier with those glass shields again, in order to get that person restrained and handcuffed and out, because they also don't want the visual of that happening that incites other people. That it's all part of a lot of training, and to be able to think you can do this without that training, I think is bad. And we're seeing
watching,
the results of it.
We're watching this, and we've watched it, over 50 years. You guys have both seen where it works and where it doesn't work, and escalation virtually never works, and de-escalation is complicated. But that's why we train. Now, so we're watching this going on again. There's people throwing things in both directions. We now have, okay, there we go. We got the ICE officials running after somebody or something. Tom Manger, we watched the video. I don't want to be gratuitous about continuing to show it. We are trying to deconstruct it and understand it, which you have done and Rob D'Amico have done. But again, it's one angle. As Rob points out, it seems to be from across the road and indoors, so you're not hearing everything. But you do hear gunfire. I thought I counted 5 gunshots. I don't know. And again, I'm not an expert at this. That said, DHS said that the person who was shot was armed. Again, we don't have detail as to whether they had a gun or they took someone's gun. You guys have both discussed that. We also don't know the gunshots we heard. We have no idea of who fired what at whom. Would you agree with that?
All of that. In fact, we don't even know what kind of weapon it is. They say that the individual had a weapon. It could be a knife, could be a gun. We don't even know what kind of weapon that they're referring to. So this is... there's so many things that we don't know about this, but I have to go back to what Rob was talking about earlier, and that is watching the tactics and how ICE is handling these demonstrations. And it goes back to a question, Ali, that you had earlier. Where's MPD? Where are the state police? Why aren't they assisting? I'll tell you, I haven't spoken to Chief O'Hara. MPD is not there because they don't have the people. They are woefully understaffed. There are about 300 officers under the staffing where they should be. And so when things like this happen, it's very difficult for them to deploy, 100 officers or more to try and become a barrier between the crowd and what the crowd is upset about. In this case, it's certainly about the shooting. It's certainly about it, but it's about ICE as well. So ICE is almost forced to do this on their own. I've heard other reports where ICE is upset that they're not getting more help from the local police and from the state police, but there have been discussions, and they should know what the local police, what their capacity is to help, because they've been told what their capacity is to help in these situations. And this is where, the discussion about, well, ICE, what are you going to do? What, what operations are you going to try and perform? And this is where you got to find the balance so that ICE is not out there on their own. And when something blows up like this, when it turns into this kind of chaos, you can't then say, oh, wait, Minneapolis, you need to help us. Minneapolis doesn't have the capacity.
To be clear, there is something more than 5 times the size of Minneapolis police in federal agents in Minnesota right now. So you're right; they're not even close to being having that. Again, we're looking at weaponry here. These are generally speaking, the weapons that you're seeing are the kinds of things that you fire pepper balls or tear gas out of. There is some live weaponry. We did see earlier one of the officers taking a handgun out. I do have a statement. I have a number of new statements that I need to read to you before we hear from the mayor of Minneapolis, who's expected to speak within the next 5 minutes. DHS has now put out a statement. Let me read this to you. David Rode, I want you to just listen to this with me because there's a lot of detail in here. At 9:05 a.m. Central Time, as DHS law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted operation in Minneapolis against an illegal alien wanted for violent assault, an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun seen here. The officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. More details on the armed struggle are forthcoming. Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics on scene immediately delivered medical aid to the subject, but the subject was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines and no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. About 200 rioters arrived at the scene and began to obstruct and assault law enforcement on the scene. Crowd control measures were deployed for the safety of the public and law enforcement. The situation is evolving and more information is forthcoming. Hold your thought on that for a second. We have a comment from Border Patrol that says Border Patrol agents are trained extremely well to protect themselves, their fellow agents, and innocent third parties. When a supposed peaceful protester brings a weapon, such as a loaded handgun, and brandishes it, there are going to be severe consequences and repercussions. We have pleaded with and warned the media and the politicians that their irresponsible, hate-filled, and false rhetoric is going to get people unnecessarily hurt or worse, killed when they portray our agents and officers as the aggressors. They have encouraged encourage these reckless confrontations and attacks on our agents and officers who are performing their lawful duties and enforcing the laws that Congress has put on the books. The fake and dishonest media and the shameless politicians should be held accountable for willfully misleading the public and enticing these protesters and agitators. We have full confidence that when more facts are revealed, our agents and officers will be shown to have utilized justifiable force in eliminating the threat. So much for bringing the temperature down.
Correct. I mean, this is partisanship versus public service, and it's so important for public officials at moments like this to not use adjectives like massacre and fake news and this kind of thing. So it's surprising to hear that kind of language. The officers who may have, feared for their lives, this individual, all of that could be true.
All of that could be true.
That could be absolutely
true. Could have a gun.
True.
There could have been somebody with a gun.
And all of the officers around the individual who died should have been wearing body cameras. Release that body camera footage. Be transparent. Let the public decide what happened here. And again, if he was armed and if he refused to, when a law enforcement confrontation happens and an individual is armed, if that individual resists, the shootings are often, I want to say often, we don't know for sure here, justified. But release the body cam videos, bring down the temperatures, promise a thorough and fair investigation with state and local officials. There's a different tone that can be adopted. Again, the last thing we want is more violence, more injuries, and more deaths.
Rob D'Amico, to the conversation that Tom and I were just having a moment ago, Amy Klobuchar has put out a statement saying, Donald Trump and your lieutenants who ordered this ICE surge, watch the horrific video of the killing today. The world is watching. Thousands of citizens stopped and harassed. This is the important part to what we were saying. Local police are no longer able to do their work. Kids hiding, schools closed. Get ICE out of Minnesota now. Republicans in Congress, stop your silence and stop being complicit. So Tom was mentioning the fact that Minneapolis, Minnesota don't have the resources to handle what ICE is doing, but it's also a different relationship that Minnesotans have with their police. They may not love them, but they have a different relationship with them than they've got with these ICE officers. So when you have a complete breakdown of trust, this makes all of this more complicated than it otherwise would be.
Absolutely. You saw in the last shooting when they didn't even let the ambulance into the scene to get close enough to this good. And I just didn't understand that. Why would you not let an ambulance in? Obviously, there's no prior coordination. We had arrests in the FBI, which we couldn't tell the locals about. If we were arresting a spy that was a classified case, we still had an agent at the nearest EMT station that if something went wrong, that they could grab them and get them to the scene right away. I mean, we took extra precautions if that was something that we couldn't do. And what you're seeing now is also you saw complaints by the local police that some of their law enforcement officers are actually getting harassed by ICE. So there's a lot of tension between the two. But I think the police would be professional enough if they were asked to come in and help quell these protests. I think they would do it professionally. You have to, ICE is the gas that's lighting this fire. So if you get them out of this area and you get the police in, I think the protests would actually diminish it quite a bit. And
Tom,
we just read the statement.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do want to make a comment on the statement that was released by ICE with this person with the gun. And it may be, obviously, they're showing a picture of the gun, they're showing a picture of the magazine. But what I saw in that statement is if you have these ICE officers that are standing around and an individual comes up to them with a weapon drawn, I think he is going to get shot right there. I would. If someone came up to me and I'm doing a law enforcement operation and he has a weapon drawn, I'm not going to get into a physical fight with him. I'm probably going to shoot him because he's bringing a gun right up there. So that part of that statement kind of doesn't make sense to me. Now, he could have had it, again, in his clothing or something. They're putting it out there. But that part of the statement to me was a bit confusing because if you see these ICE agents or Border Patrol that were standing around, all of them armed, all of them in tactical gear, and someone comes out with them with a gun already pointed at them, I think that it's going to be a gunfight at that particular moment and not an altercation that we saw. So, again, and the problem goes back to they've said things before that turned out not to be true. And that's what the difference is nowadays when you can't take what they're saying as the honest truth. And there's
right,
no
right, and only because we had video do we know some of these things not to be true. Yeah. Tom, I will say. Go ahead, Rob.
Tom said, body cameras are great. Like,
yes.
Police
good
all
for
the
everybody.
time complained at first, but after they started wearing them, they started figuring out body cameras prove what they were saying in court and on tickets and on everything else. It comes out to, if you're a good cop, you want a body cam.
Yeah. Yeah. Tom, I've had critical things to say about MPD in the past, but I will say this. They have worked hard to try and regain the trust of the community. The part of the problem here is whether or not they have the resources to help ICE out with crowd control and things like that. There's a piece of me that wonders, they don't want this fight. They don't want to be associated with ICE and the federal officers in this thing. They've worked hard to get the trust of their community back. This is kind of only bad for them to be associated with this.
You know, having spoke with Chief O'Hara, I can tell you that in his heart, he wants to support any law enforcement agency that is in Minneapolis. But he is being put in a very difficult position. As much as he would want to help any agency, when you've got an agency in here that is escalating things day after day, week after week, to situations like this. And this is not going to end. I mean, we saw the number of protesters there yesterday, thousands of them. It's going to be the same today. It's going to be the same tomorrow, even with the weather that's coming through. People show up in Minneapolis. And so he is in a very difficult position, wanting to support them. But I think I won't speak for him, but I would say if I was in his position, and I have been in his position in many situations, I would want to go to ICE and say, look, can we pause this? Can we pause just for a moment? I'm not telling you got to leave. I'm not telling you can't do your job. But can we just pause this for a minute? Because we've got to take this down. It's gotten to a point where ICE can't seem to control the crowd. Minneapolis doesn't have the capacity to do it. The crowd is, so I think everybody, or many people in Minnesota, many people in Minneapolis, want this to pause for just a moment. And let me just say one quick thing about the body-worn camera. I have, as the chief of 3 large departments, I've overseen dozens of officer-involved shootings. Many of them had body-worn camera footage. But I will caution you that people can look at the body-worn camera footage and see many different things. It's not going to be a consensus by the public or by the media or anybody. Oh, this is what happened. Sometimes it is just, pretty clear cut. But so often people see what they want to see and think, gosh, why did they do this? Why did they have to do that? The body-worn camera, it helps and it's great. And I think every cop should be wearing a body-worn camera. But too often, it's not going to bring people together in terms of deciding, yes, this is what happened.
Part of the problem, David Rode, is that immigration enforcement is civil. And where there are altercations between police and the public, it's usually around something criminal. Every one of these shootings is something that has escalated from what was something else, immigration enforcement, into another thing. Renee Good was not part of immigration enforcement. We don't know from these DHS and CBP reports. Sounds like an individual approach to U.S. Border Patrol officers. We don't know what this means, but we've got a group who's responsible for civil immigration enforcement, which some proportion of Americans support. And then we've got this. We've got something that feels like policing. Again, it's an important point, because they all have these things that say police. Our understanding of policing is actually not what these guys are. And I don't mean that to disparage ICE and CBP, but they're not trained to do the things that you think police in your community are supposed to do.
Correct. Like at least ICE in the past.
Oh, sorry, is the mayor coming up to speak now? Let me just ask. Okay, let's put that up on the screen. And when the mayor, let's listen into this press conference.
At approximately 9:03 a.m. this morning, Minneapolis police received a report of a shooting involving 26th Street and Nicollet Avenue on the south side of the city. Officers arrived and found an adult male with multiple gunshot wounds when they arrived. Life-saving aid was being rendered, and he was transported by ambulance to Hennepin County Medical Center, where he was later pronounced deceased. Based on the information that we have, which is very limited, This is a 37-year-old white male who is a Minneapolis resident, and we believe he is an American citizen. We have not been told any official reports of what has led up to the shooting, but we have seen the video that is circulating on social media. Our demand today is for those federal agencies that are operating in our city to do so with the same discipline, humanity, and integrity that effective law enforcement in this country demands. We urge everyone to remain peaceful. We recognize that there is a lot of anger and a lot of questions around what has happened, but we need people to remain peaceful. In the area, we have an unlawful assembly at this time. Minneapolis police have given multiple warnings for the crowd to disperse. We are asking for people to avoid the area and to leave if you are there. We have requested mutual aid from the Minnesota State Patrol and from all our local and county regional partners. We ask everyone to remain calm and to please do not destroy our own city.
I just saw a video of more than 6 masked agents pummeling one of our constituents and shooting him to death. How many more residents, how many more Americans need to die or get badly hurt for this operation to end? How many more lives need to be lost before this administration realizes that a political and partisan narrative is not as important as American values? How many times must local and national leaders must plead with you, Donald Trump, to end this operation and recognize that this is not creating safety in our city? As you'll hear from Director Sayer in just a second, we have seen these kinds of operations in other places, in other countries, but not here in America. Not in a way where a great American city is being invaded by its own federal government. I'm done being told that our community members are responsible for the vitriol in our streets. I'm done being told that our local elected officials are solely responsible for turning down the temperature. Just yesterday, we saw 15,000 people peacefully protesting in the streets, speaking out, standing up for their neighbors. Not a single broken window, not a single injury. Those peaceful protests embody the very principles that both Minneapolis and America was founded upon. Conversely, the mass militarized force and unidentified agents who are occupying our streets, that is what weakens our country. That is what erodes trust in both law enforcement and in democracy itself. So to everyone listening, stand with Minneapolis. Stand up for America. Recognize that your children will ask you what side you were on. Your grandchildren will ask you what you did to act to prevent this from happening again, to make sure that the foundational elements of our democracy were rock solid. What did you do to protect your city? What did you do to protect your nation? This is not what America is about. This is not a partisan issue. This is an American issue. This administration and everyone involved in this operation should be reflecting. They should be reflecting right now and asking themselves, what exactly are you accomplishing? If the goal was to achieve peace and safety, this is doing exactly the opposite. If the goal was to achieve calm and prosperity, this is doing exactly the opposite. Are you standing up for American families right now, or are we tearing them apart? The invasion of these heavily armed masked agents roaming around on our streets of Minneapolis, emboldened with a sense of impunity, it has to end. This is not how it has to be. So, to President Trump, this is a moment to act like a leader. Put Minneapolis, put America first in this moment. Let's achieve peace. Let's end this operation, and I'm telling you, our city will come back. Safety will be restored. We're asking for you to take action now to remove these federal agents. Director Sayre.
My name is Rachel Sayre, and I am the Director of the Emergency Management Department for the City of Minneapolis. I took this job to keep us safe because I live here, and this is my community. We are doing everything we can to mitigate the impacts of this terrible situation. The city's Emergency Operations Center continues to be activated, as it has throughout the surge in federal agents over the last few weeks. We are tracking impacts and coordinating the city's response to this situation, which is having profound repercussions in our community. I can't underscore enough how much Operation Metro Surge is impacting our city. Families with loved ones detained and those who are afraid to be in public lest they become targets need help accessing the most basic necessities like food, housing, and rides to school. Businesses are shuttering and our local economy is severely impacted, which means families are suffering, just as we were rounding a corner in our recovery. Many of our Minneapolis residents, my neighbors, my friends, my community members, are ceasing participation in public life, afraid to even go to the doctor. In response, the city enterprise continues to utilize our entire emergency apparatus. That means staff across departments, often around the clock, are putting their regular jobs on hold in order to Metro Surge. I want everyone to know there are numerous resources available to community members right now. We have mental health help available. We have food assistance, housing and rental assistance, legal help. We are sharing information about what to do if you are exposed to tear gas, pepper spray, or other chemical agents, and the state AGs and ACLU are collecting reports of rights violations. You can access these resources on the city's virtual resource center at minneapolismn.gov/ICE. Please share this information with your neighbors. We have help and we want you to be able to access that. My background is in international humanitarian response in conflict zones in Yemen, Haiti, Syria, Iraq, and Ukraine. What I've seen here is what I've seen there. A powerful entity violently and intentionally terrorizing people, making them afraid to go outside so they can't earn a living, so that kids are forced out of school. This has a lasting generational impact. People can't plan a single day of their lives because they don't know who is around the corner and if their family member or neighbor is about to be taken away. In these times, you see both the best and the worst. The worst is the terror and the feeling of helplessness. The best will continue to be our community's response. The way we are showing up for each other, that is in the absolute worst of times. We're showing up for each other in the absolute worst of times. I'll turn it back to the mayor. Thank you.
We'll open it to questions.
We are seeing an incredible volatile situation unfolding right now around that scene. Is there any communication right now with local federal law enforcement or cooperation, or where do those efforts stand to try to calm what's going on down there right now?
Yeah, I'll turn it to the chief to answer.
So the question was, there is an incredibly volatile scene in South Minneapolis right now, and the extent of communication with law enforcement agencies. We have established a command post that is led by Minneapolis Police, and there are representatives from all of the regional, local, county, and state organizations. We have had communication with Homeland Security, but they have not been able to provide us any specific details around the incident itself. We are responsible for ensuring the safety of people on the streets of our city, and we are doing everything that we can to maintain the peace right now, led by Minneapolis Police, but with the help of the Minnesota State Patrol, Hennepin and Ramsey County Sheriffs. Several suburban towns are in the city helping us with 911 calls. We have done an emergency recall of all sworn personnel back to duty. And we are working with the fire department right now to ensure that 2 small fires that were started in the area are safely extinguished. But again, we need everyone to avoid the area if possible. And the people who are in the area, we understand your frustrations. This is not sustainable. But we need people to leave the area at this time.
Is the National Guard involved?
We have communicated with the National Guard. They have been on standby for several days. And we have ensured the National Guard, as well as all of the local law enforcement partners, are aware of the situation.
Chief and Mayor, if I can ask you, this is a statement from Tricia McLaughlin, spokesperson for DHS. She said in her statement, an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. Seen here, they showed a picture of it. The officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. More details on the armed struggle are forthcoming. Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics on the scene immediately delivered medical aid. Is that what happened?
So Minneapolis Police, the question was, you read a statement from DHS saying that a weapon was presented and there was attempts to disarm the person. Again, like I stated earlier, Minneapolis Police, as well as our supervisors, our watch commander, responded to the scene. We were not provided any public safety statement around the incident, what happened. We have since seen a video that is circulating online, like thousands of other people have at this time. So we do not know what happened prior to the recording that is online right now. I immediately called for the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension to respond, to conduct an investigation. They are on the scene. I believe the FBI is on the scene as well. But I think the video speaks for itself. What I can tell you is we have identified this person, 37-year-old white male, resident of the city. The only interaction that we are aware of with law enforcement has been for traffic tickets, and we believe he is a lawful gun owner with a permit to carry.
Chief, can you clarify, was MPD cut out of this investigation? Has the BCA been cut out, like you've seen from the 2 previous shootings?
The question was, has MPD been cut out of the investigation, and has the BCA been cut out? As I stated, I immediately requested the BCA to respond. It's my understanding that they are on the scene. I have not heard anything otherwise. There was initially some information was relayed to me over the radio that our officers were told that they were either not needed or could leave, and I gave a direct order to ensure that Minneapolis Police maintain the scene as well as other state and local law enforcement.
Can you talk about the discrepancy?
Do you know whether it was multiple officers involved in the shooting or one officer, and do you know their whereabouts? Are they in custody at all, or still on the scene?
So the question was is there multiple officers involved in the shooting? That is the preliminary information. That is our understanding, that it was more than one law enforcement officer involved in the discharge. And again, there is public video that shows several law enforcement officers in a scuffle with someone.
Can you talk about the discrepancy? The initial reports said that the victim here was 51 years old. The information that you have, where is that from?
So the question was, the initial reports said the victim was 51. The information that I have is we sent Minneapolis police officers to the hospital with the individual who was shot, and they have since identified that person.
2 more questions.
Do you have a name of the individual who was shot?
I do, and I'm not releasing it.
Are you able to talk, have you been able to talk with top ICE and Border Patrol officials to ask them to please be in on this, or have you talked to them, or have you been rejected?
The question was, have we talked with federal law enforcement to be in on this? We have had conversations with Homeland Security Investigations this morning. We are told they do not have any information to share at this time, but we will attempt to maintain those communications going forward.
Do you believe that? Do you believe that they have no information to share at this time?
The question was, do I believe that they have no information to share at this time? I don't know if the individual that we were in contact with would or not. This is a Saturday morning. And just like it was for us, it was a scramble to do an emergency recall and to get people to the scene.
All right, thank you guys. We'll have more information if we get any later throughout the day.
Okay, everybody, 8 minutes past the top of the hour. This is Alex Witt here at MS Now headquarters in New York City. Just want to let all of you know what we've been listening to. We've been listening to that press briefing by the Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, and then Director of Emergency Management Rachel Sayer. And they are trying to piece together what precisely happened shortly after 9 a.m. local time there in Minneapolis when a man described most recently as a white man was shot dead when he approached immigration agents. Now, DHS is alleging that he was carrying a 9mm handgun. There is video of the incident, and it is quite shocking to watch, where this man is apprehended by no less than 5, but ultimately about 7 ICE and potentially combination Border Patrol agents working together as they conducted immigration operations that have been so plentiful throughout Minneapolis of late. This man has died. He was taken to the hospital, and you heard the police chief there say that a police officer from Minneapolis PD accompanied him to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. We do not have an identity nor confirmed age of him. But nonetheless, what you are seeing, escalating tensions, dramatic scenes on the streets after this new deadly shooting involving federal agents, intensifying President Trump's immigration enforcement policy. Residents have rushed out. They're braving the frigid temperatures, and it happened after the shots were fired this morning. It happened on Nicollet Avenue. And the video I've just mentioned, it's been shared widely online, and it appears to show the agents wrestling a man to the ground and then shooting him dead. And I'm going to give you all a warning here because we are going to play it now. Viewers might find this level of violence very disturbing.
They're doing too much, man, and they keep pushing people, you know? They killed him? Did they kill that guy? Are you kidding me, dude?
You could hear for yourself the pops toward the end of that video, after which those agents that were surrounding the man scattered and jumped back, and you heard the horrific reaction from the man who was taking that video from across the street. We want to say that MS Now has not yet confirmed exactly what happened in that video, what happened in the moments specifically leading up to the shooting, or who fired the first shot, though we did hear the police chief say that he believes there were multiple persons involved in the shooting, that multiple shots were fired and multiple individuals were involved. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Senators Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith, all confirming this shooting. Walz, in fact, says he spoke with the White House, and he's calling on the president to end the ICE operation in his state. A Department of Homeland Security official told MS Now, quote, the suspect had a firearm with 2 magazines. And again, we should note for all of you that carrying a gun in Minnesota, it is legal for both open and concealed carry. We've got some reporters and analysts in place. They're covering this breaking news with us, and we will begin the hour with MS Now reporter Alex Tabbitt, who's been on the scene all day for us in Minneapolis. So, Alex, from your vantage point, what more can you tell us about the shooting, and what is this situation like there right now?
but we're on 27th and Blaisdell. That's about 1 block away from 27th and Nicollet, where this tragedy transpired at around 9 a.m. local time this morning. What we've seen in the hours since is flashbangs, pepper spray, pepper balls, tear gas fill the air. It is a rare moment of calm right now in the aftermath of this scene. Now, what we've been seeing from protesters is what's happening right now. Basically, the federal agents, the law enforcement have been expanding the scene larger and larger, trying to keep demonstrators away from what happened this morning. But what protesters want to do is make sure that they're still nearby so that they can hold these federal agents accountable. So they're making these makeshift barricades. As you can see here, Alex, there's a couch and a couple of trash cans and what appears to be a desk, as people of Minnesota who are fed up with the federal agent presence here, some 3,000 federal agents here who have now appeared to have killed 2 people, who are fed up with the Trump administration. They want to make sure that they can stay near what happened this morning, that they can protest, they can chant, and they can hold these federal agents accountable for their actions by videotaping them, by whistling, by causing as much attention, bringing as much attention to their actions as possible. Alex?
So, Alex, I've heard about 2 fires. I believe we saw you in the last hour. You were at an area where there was black smoke in the distance. Can you talk about what's going on with both of those and if those fires have been extinguished? Because the police chief said that they were working with the fire department to put them out.
That's absolutely right, Alex. There was a fire that was ablaze right where a bunch of demonstrators were a block down. It appears like it has been extinguished. So that is one major development. Another one is that on the scene, we saw a large vehicle, almost looked like a tank, show up to the scene. And then we heard on a megaphone somebody say, "This is the FBI. We are conducting an investigation," which led a lot of protesters to chant, "Get out. We don't want you here." Anger towards another federal government entity as well. So right now, despite having seen fire in the air, tear gas in the air, pepper spray, pepper balls, all these non-lethal weapons deployed in the last few hours. Right now is a rare moment of relative calm, yet still tension and anger as people here are demanding that the Trump administration and that ICE leave Minneapolis in the wake of now another fatal shooting. Alex?
Absolutely. They want the end of Operation Metro Surge there throughout Minneapolis. Alex, thanks. I know we'll be getting back to you, and want to let all of you know that we have Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker standing by for us. But very quickly, I want to get to Rob D'Amico, MS Now National Security and Intelligence Analyst and former FBI Supervisor, Tom Major, MS Now National Law Enforcement Analyst and former U.S. Capitol Police Chief, Peter Baker, New York Times Chief White House Correspondent and MS Now political contributor, and Barbara McQuaid, former U.S. Attorney, now law professor at the University of Michigan and an MS Now legal analyst. So welcome to all of you. I want to go quickly through a few questions before we get to the governor. So, Rob, DHS says that the suspect had a firearm with 2 magazines. What is standard operating procedure for the use of deadly force when a suspect is tackled to the ground? You've seen this video. We just played it. What is your initial reaction to what you saw?
My initial reaction was that the restraint training wasn't very good. What they're doing to him to try to get him to submit, to be handcuffed. You normally, when you have a group of people like that, the priority is the arms. One person on each arm. You get someone on the feet so they can't kick you, and then you get someone on the handcuffs to get the handcuffs on. Now, there's a couple things that have come up. The local police said that this gentleman, this 37-year-old, was a licensed firearm carrier. And I don't know exactly what they mean, if there's a concealed weapons permit or registered, but to me that goes that he may have been carrying a weapon legally and then got into a scuffle with the police, and then the weapon came out or something happened. And in fact, someone from the federal law enforcement side saw the weapon, deemed it a threat, and made a shot.
Tom,
there could be many different things in there.
Yeah, let me ask you quickly. The word brandishing was used in the DHS statement, which would mean, to my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, that he would have had it out and was showing it. What is the difference between that and someone who's got one in his pocket, because if he's described as someone legally able to carry that, both open or concealed, that is by the law in Minnesota. At what point does it step into something that they think, uh-oh, we need to act?
That's what got me when they first came out and said that he brandished he came up to the Border Patrol agents with the weapon out. I would think right then you would have the gunfight. If I'm standing around doing a law enforcement thing and someone came out with a weapon drawn, or if it was out, I'm not getting in a hand fight with them. I'm drawing my weapon, and if he makes one move, I'm going to inflict deadly force. That's where I saw as that comment that did not make sense to me. If he came out with the weapon brandished or out, they would have demanded him to drop it. They would not have gone hands-on. So that's where I'm seeing some conflict with what normally happens if someone walks up to a law enforcement agent with a weapon out. There's a instant gunfight to a point. Like you say, drop the weapon. If they don't, you're going to engage them before this 5-on-1 fight happens. So I think there's some discrepancies in that statement.
Well, and again, I want to make very clear that we don't know exactly what led up to the video that we've been able to show you. And even that video at points, it wasn't giving us the total picture broadly in what happened leading up to it or what may have been happening on the side. So, Rob, thank you for that. Please stay where you are. Tom, Peter, Barb, as well, all of you. I do need to get to the governor right now. We have Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Welcome, sir. So, first of all, your reaction to this deadly shooting, the second one in Minneapolis, and all of these images that we're seeing out of that city today.
Well, first of all, it's tragic and it's outrageous. The ICE patrols in our American cities are causing more damage than the president thinks that he's accomplishing. So what I can tell you is we went through this in Chicago, although the force in Minneapolis is multiple times bigger. And what you're seeing is that ICE, immediately upon the shooting taking place, without any investigation at all, has come out with its statement about what happened. Instead of saying we're going to investigate, they've just said this is what happened, it's all justified, brandishing of a weapon, et cetera. And that's what they did in Chicago. They did that to Miramar Martinez, who was shot 5 times by ICE and taken to court as if she had been the cause of it. And it turns out, what do you know, she was the case was dismissed. None of it was true. But ICE lied immediately, as they did with Silverio Villegas, also killed by ICE in Chicago. So ICE is a bunch of untrained and unqualified people. They've obviously added literally thousands and thousands of new agents. It's like it's become some sort of secret police force for Donald Trump. They need to step back from American cities. And in particular, right now, they need to withdraw, step back from Minneapolis. And we need to talk about how are we now going to proceed without them causing more damage and more violence rather than, them lying persistently about what they're doing and causing uproar in our American cities.
So, Governor, how should a White House react to a scenario like this? And does it differ from how you expect this White House to react based on your experience dealing with this administration?
Look, I think you can see over and over again, there is no understanding by the White House that they're the ones ratcheting up the violence, ratcheting up the assault on Americans. And the reaction by folks is, what do you know? Yesterday, 15,000 people in the freezing cold in Minneapolis protesting peacefully. Nothing bad happened yesterday with peaceful protests. Today, you have ICE agents killing somebody on the streets. An American president should be standing up, calling for calm. That's not what this president ever does. In fact, he wants the temperature to go up. Why? Because what he's looking for is an excuse to invoke the Insurrection Act, to bring actual troops into American cities. By the way, he may as well have already done that, because when you've got thousands of people wearing camouflage and masks and carrying automatic weapons, walking down the streets, they did this in Chicago, and assaulting people, then, they're already there. They tried to call out the National Guard. The Insurrection Act is his next move, and he's just waiting for something bad to happen on the streets beyond, with protesters doing something terrible. And that hasn't happened, thank God. The protesters have been peaceful as they were in Chicago, but it's a hair trigger for this president.
Governor, you have just posted X. It happened just a few minutes ago. And here's what you write. I'm asking my fellow Republican and Democratic governors across the nation to have a unified response. We must all stand against the lawlessness being inflicted in our states. Sir, is there anything you and other lawmakers can do locally to stop these federal agent-involved incidents from happening? Are your hands tied without a significant intervention from Congress? Is the federal government overstepping state authority?
Look, I think Tim Walz and Minnesota is setting an example here, calling for the state to do the investigation. That's the right way to do it. And by the way, state laws may very well, and I believe have been, violated. I believe that convening our governors together to talk about how we can first bring down the temperature of all this and push ICE out of our cities, and second, a convening where I believe Republicans and Democrats can talk about what is the next step for managing our states against the onslaught of the federal government. But you know what? The GOP is nowhere to be found. You know, they're the ones who scream and yell about federal tyranny, about interference with states' rights historically. And now, well, their president is, what do you know, violating states' rights and attacking our states. And Republicans are nowhere to be found to talk about it. We're Democrats. We believe in standing up for people's individual rights in our states. And the onslaught of the federal government is damaging to the peace of this country. Peaceful protesters should be allowed to peacefully protest. And we should be able to live peaceful lives without having the interference of ICE and Customs and Border Patrol knocking down doors. They're now talking about going into people's homes wherever they want to, even though they do not have a judicial warrant. You think that's okay, violating the Constitution in that way? None of us think that's the right thing to do. But, Republicans are too afraid of Donald Trump to say anything about it. Well, I'm saying something about it. I believe that Democrats ought to stand up and speak out, and Republicans ought to do the very same thing. When Joe Biden was president, they were all screaming when Joe Biden tried to call out the National Guard, federalizing them. And I screamed, too. I didn't think that was the right thing to do above a governor's call for a National Guard. And we all stood together against that. Now Republicans are silent on the issue. So I really think that we're in a precarious moment. And I just think that if we do not stop this now, if we don't abolish Trump's ICE and make sure that we have a trained force that is following the law, that this is going to erupt into something really terrible. It already is, but it could get vastly worse.
Governor, have you spoken with your counterpart there in Minnesota, given the two of you have joined forces and based on your experiences across your states?
I have spoken with the governor and connected with him consistently, and indeed this morning. And I wanted him to know that the people of Illinois stand with him, that I stand with the people of Minnesota, and that we've got to stand together in sending a message that people need to be held accountable for their actions. And we don't know all the facts. You got to do an investigation before we, go after prosecuting somebody. But it appears that somebody who had a license to carry on the streets of Minneapolis was tackled and now is being tackled and shot perhaps 5 times. I heard 5 shots anyway. Yeah. And it, somebody should be held accountable here, but we got to do the investigation. The federal government doesn't want to do that because, they're just consistently, they have, a bad force of untrained people that are taking to the streets on behalf of Donald Trump and DHS and ICE and CBP. And then DHS just lies consistently. Tricia McLaughlin at DHS, time after time after time, she just puts out statements that are wholly untrue, proven to be untrue, time and again. And that's why when they put out a statement this morning, what can we believe? We can't believe it because constant lies coming out of them. Let's actually have the state do an investigation. That's the way to proceed here.
Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, sir, on this very sobering day. I want to thank you for your time here on MS Now. I know we'll be speaking with you again. Thank you, sir. So I'm joined once again by Tom Manger, Peter Baker, Rob D'Amico, Barb McQuaid. My next question will go to you, Tom. Let's talk about the governor, who Governor Walz has urged the public to avoid the scene. Clearly, crowds are there gathering. They're protesting, and they're opposed to what's happening right now, as we see very little because of the presence of smoke there. Smoke bombs that we don't know what exactly the agent is. But nonetheless, let's talk about how law enforcement deals with this. When you have a situation that is so volatile, not only because of the action, a man has been killed today, but they're very volatile emotions on all sides. You see people that have witnessed this, you see protesters that are upset about what has happened. One can presume that it is a shocking thing for an agent to have to shoot somebody dead. So there is reaction there. So put this all together for us and talk about how to deal with it.
Yeah, it is a traumatic incident for any officer involved shooting. It's traumatic for the people who witness it, obviously for the person who is shot, and for the officer that does the shooting. It is very traumatic. But I want to go back to Chief O'Hara's statements at the press conference. He said, I understand your frustration. He was talking to the public. I understand your frustrations. He said this has now become an unlawful assembly, and he pleaded with folks to go home and be peaceful. So he is really understands that he is stuck in the middle. The Minneapolis Police Department stuck in the middle. It's interesting that he said in this press conference that they've gotten mutual aid from agencies around Minneapolis, from state agencies. He specifically mentioned no federal agency. And in fact, he said, very matter-of-factly, he said, we have gotten no information from DHS. And I will tell you, this is very telling. It really crystallizes in my mind the position that Chief O'Hara and the Minneapolis Police Department is in, stuck in the middle of this very chaotic, this very volatile situation.
Tom, what is it that we're seeing? If you can see the left of the screen here, is that tear gas? What is that, do you think?
It could either be smoke or tear gas. They use both because, frankly, you don't want to run out of the tear gas, because if you need it, you need to have some. So oftentimes they'll do one tear gas, and then they'll do 2 or 3 smokes to get people to think, oh, that's more tear gas, and just get compliance from the crowd to move away.
And let me ask you about coordination, though, between the different law enforcement agencies. You mentioned there's not a lot of coordination by indication of what the lack of comment, I guess, when you reach out to try to get a statement on what's happening from DHS. But locally on the ground, given your experience there, can they take the lead and coordinate over the presence of federal agents?
Well, it's interesting that Chief O'Hara said that at one point at the scene, DHS said, we're good. And O'Hara said that he directed that his folks stay at the scene. It's interesting that he had one of his folks either go in the ambulance or follow the ambulance to the hospital where the person that was shot went. And so to the extent that Chief O'Hara, when he first spoke, talked about we are responsible for the safety of the people in this city. He's doing everything he can. He and his folks can't interfere with what DHS is doing. However, they have the Minneapolis police certainly have a right and a responsibility to be there in the city where this kind of chaos and volatility and violence is going on.
Peter Baker, we are aware the president has been briefed on this incident. Will a second death in Minneapolis by federal forces deter President Trump? Will it give any of his staff, Peter, reason to sit down and seriously discuss with the president the potential removal of federal agents from the city or state?
Well, of course, it's hard to predict, but history suggests that that's not likely to happen. He has not been known to appeal for calm in situations that are volatile like this. Rather, his history has been one who, ratchets things up, who is very incendiary. He and his team, after Renee Good's shooting, immediately, denounced her as a domestic terrorist. They said that, that she was part of some radical left lunatic fringe, and she was a threat to. In fact, the president told my colleagues in the New York Times, they happened to be in there interviewing me at the time, that she had actually run over the ICE officer, which the video showed is not true. So I think that his instinct is to immediately defend the officers involved. The DHS has already put up a statement online saying that this person who was shot intended to massacre. That's their word, massacre law enforcement officers. We don't know much about the details here. We don't know his identity. We don't know what happened in the immediate moments before that video. But the president's not usually somebody who waits for the facts and not somebody who's been interested in a dispassionate, apolitical investigation.
Barbara, so many legal questions on this. How does this play out? Do you expect DHS, given the fact that they have put out a basic summary of what has happened, 3 hours or so after the incident without a proper investigation on the ground? What legally speaking can be done about this moving forward? Is there anything that can supersede that which DHS is putting out for an investigation?
Yes, I mean, like Peter, I'm very skeptical about the statement that they've made. Just like Renee Good, they said here that this was an act of self-defense, and we've all seen that video of Renee Good where our eyes tell us otherwise. The state does have the ability as a separate sovereign to investigate this case itself and to potentially bring murder charges. Now, at this stage, we don't know enough facts, and they don't know enough facts, but they should have access to the evidence so that they can assess it and decide whether to file charges. We've heard J.D. Vance and others claim falsely that federal agents are absolutely immune from state prosecution. That's not right. They do have some immunity, but it's a qualified immunity. They have to show first that they were acting within the scope of their duty and that what they did was necessary and proper. Now, maybe in this case, that was the case. If the man pulled a gun on them, maybe it was necessary and proper. But what I've seen of videos is this is a man who approached them by recording them on his phone. And very quickly, this conflict escalates. Well-trained agents are taught to de-escalate situations so it does not resort to violence. So I think there are a lot of questions to be answered yet. And I think state authorities have a right and a responsibility to answer those questions.
Well, I want to thank all four of you for answering my questions thus far. In summary of what we know so far, Rob, Tom, Peter, and Barb, thank you so much. Join me right now. We have Democratic Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. She is a member of the House Judiciary Committee and ranking member of the Immigration, Integrity, Security, and Enforcement Committee. Congresswoman, good to see you back on the show. Unfortunately, these circumstances, we start with asking your reaction to another deadly shooting by federal officers in Minneapolis. How does this happen again?
Alex, it is absolutely horrifying. It is extremely dangerous. And I think what we are seeing is what happens when the federal government militarizes the streets and sends agents in with literal freedom to do whatever they want and no accountability. These are not trained agents. We know that. And I think that first Renee Good's shooting, but certainly all of the events leading up to that in California, in Illinois, now in Minneapolis, over and over again, where First Amendment rights, Fourth Amendment rights are being violated. And now this incident, which I have reviewed all the videos that are available so far, and I've watched the press conferences. And to me, what DHS is already saying is already mischaracterizing who this person was that was killed by ICE agents. And it once again shows the danger not only of the occupying federal force that is in Minnesota today, but also of the lies that DHS seems to be willing to tell in all of these situations. It's an extremely dangerous situation. It's why I've said that Congress cannot fund DHS, cannot fund ICE and CBP, because they are operating as a lawless, unaccountable force that is killing people in our streets. no investigations, and violating the rights of U.S. citizens, of permanent residents, of immigrants who are simply trying to live their lives. This is not what the American people want, and you're seeing it reflected in the polling over and over again.
In fact, you've tweeted that you will not let ICE and CBP stay in Minnesota. So how can you do that? What power does Congress have?
Well, look, the main ways that we can stop an authoritarian government, which is what this government is right now, is the three things we have are, number one, very limited, but we do have leverage in Congress around what we give for funding. And you will note, Alex, that an unprecedented 97% of Democrats voted against the DHS funding bill. Only one Republican did, but we need to stop that funding. That was unprecedented. That goes to the Senate now. The Senate can refuse to fund this lawlessness. So that's the first thing Congress can do. The second thing that is really, really important is the power of the people. Look, public opinion is everything. And Donald Trump may have run on certain things that maybe people thought he was going to do around getting the worst off the streets. This is not what people voted for, even if they voted for Donald Trump. And so you're seeing that reflected. And Trump has to be aware of that. And Republicans need to start speaking out, voting against this funding, and calling for the administration to get ICE and CBP out. That's about the people. And then the third, of course, is the courts. But the courts do take time. And we are seeing people shot and killed. We don't have that time. Never in a million years, Alex, as somebody who is a naturalized citizen myself, would I have thought that we would see what we are seeing on the streets of America today. It is horrifying to me. And we just have to be clear that Republicans need to start speaking up, and Democrats have to use every ounce of power, because this cannot be business as usual.
Governor Tim Walz says that he spoke with the White House today after the shooting and demanded federal officers leave. I asked this question of Peter Baker right before you joined us. Your thoughts on whether you think the president will listen?
I don't know. I think that this person in the White House is not well. And that's a very nice way of putting it. I think he wants to be an authoritarian. And I think he's got people around him who want the same things that he does. And so I don't know what he's going to do. But what he needs to recognize, and what other Republicans need to recognize, is that they need to stand up for the Constitution of the United States of America. I saw that Dan Newhouse, my colleague here in Washington State this morning, had a small statement about this. People need to stand up and fight back for the America that we swore an oath to. And I think that that is really very important. But I also think that the people across this country, I'm just so grateful to Minnesotans. And I did a field hearing there, as you may know, last Friday. We took 28 members of Congress from 18 states across the country, because this is about our democracy. And right now, Republicans are stealing democracy away from us right before our very eyes. And I cannot imagine that there aren't more people in Congress representing their constituents across the aisle as well that are not going to speak out when they see this continued lawlessness. I mean, this guy listening to Chief O'Hara, this person is not even who DHS says he is. This was a white 37-year-old man who, in O'Hara's words, Chief O'Hara's words, his only interaction with law enforcement was a few parking tickets. And as you pointed out earlier, Minnesota is an open and concealed carry state. So you can't shoot somebody just for having a gun there. This is absolute horror on the streets of America today.
Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, I want to thank you for joining us on this. You know, ma'am, that we had booked you to come on and talk about your remarkable performance there on Capitol Hill on Thursday with Jack Smith, the questioning and answering. We wanted to drill down on that we will do so another time, I hope, with you. Thank you so much for your time with us today on this breaking news. So we're going to take a short break right now. On the other side of this, we will continue focusing on ICE, and this via an exclusive report with my colleague Antonia Hilton. She has extraordinary reporting. This is from Houston. It's involving a father and his 16-year-old son. The son is a U.S. citizen. Wait until you see what they have had to deal with. We'll be right back. 45 past as we bring you some live pictures right now as we continue to follow the breaking news in Minneapolis, where another person has been fatally shot by federal law enforcement. My colleague Antonia Hilton at MS Now, here, our correspondent, and also, of course, co-host of the Weekend Primetime. She's here joining me on set. You have been out following any number of cases and volatile situations across this country. Give me a sense of what you've witnessed today as we've all watched this unfold in Minneapolis and how it compares to what you've seen cumulatively.
I've spent the last several months speaking with highly trained Border Patrol and ICE agents, with former leaders of ICE, like the former director, John Sandwig, who's been on our network a number of times, speaking about these escalating tactics. And a common theme that is occurring here is that people who have deep experience with DHS say that under this second Trump administration, the reason why we are seeing these shootings, while we are seeing aggressive action, heavily militarized agents there on the ground, even in communities and neighborhoods where you might not typically think that sort of action is necessary, is because right now we have a DHS that is promoting Border Patrol tactics that were once used, say, in the desert or within 100 miles of the U.S. border for shootouts with cartels. They're deploying that into American communities. And they're in Minneapolis. The closest border, Alex, is about 7 hours away. This is not a place where these heavily militarized agents would typically be authorized to do work in the interior. But the Trump administration is actually rewarding this kind of thing. And the experts that I've spoken to warned even before the killing of Renee Good that because of this kind of promotion of those tactics and bringing them out of very dangerous environments and into kind of everyday cities and towns, that these kinds of deaths would actually be inevitable because of that. These are agents who are worried about being shot, who are encountering heavily armed, organized criminals, but now they're meeting protesters, moms, kids who are being taken by their parents to schools, but applying the same tactics that they've learned through their training at DHS over the years. And that's what has them so gravely concerned that that shooting wouldn't be the last, that this one might not be the last, and they're concerned about the same today.
And let's talk about this shooting, what we know and what we do not know. We know that there is a man, he was described as a white man by the police chief, O'Hara, there in Minneapolis, and that he was reportedly carrying a firearm. We should note that Minnesota is a state that has both open and concealed weapon carry. It is legal to do so, and he was reportedly licensed to carry a gun. We don't know if it was open or concealed. That hasn't been specified. What we do not know is what led up to this shooting. We're getting differing narratives. The one coming out of DHS is that this man was brandishing his weapon. That would indicate taking it out of a holster and or pocket, or jeans, wherever he might have been carrying it, and showing it, at least the presence of it, in his hands to ICE officers and Border Patrol officers, since we think this was an operation that had both representatives there. We don't know what led up to this. We don't know what happened immediately after. We don't know the bigger picture.
Right.
We do know, according to the Chicago police chief, that a police officer accompanied him in an ambulance to the hospital. That is where he was pronounced dead. When you have, to the point that you were making about the concerns, when you have differing opinions, differing narratives of what the facts are, but at this point, it has been less than 4 hours since this happened, and DHS comes out with a robust statement as if it is fact that could only come from an investigation. How does that complicate the mindset of everybody witnessing this across America?
Well, the former DHS officials that I've spoken to, as well as other law enforcement officials, say that that sort of thing is not standard quality law enforcement, to announce the conclusion before an investigation has even begun. that normally leaders would step in and say that they are going to be reviewing additional footage, gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses before they said something conclusive like this. But Alex, this is what we saw after the killing of Renee Good. This administration was very quick to tell people that she was a domestic terrorist, to say without any sort of qualification or additional evidence at first that they believed that she was trying to kill that officer, something that and analysts, people who've reviewed the videos still available of that, dispute very heavily. And so I think that's the concern that both law enforcement officials, but also, frankly, reporters have to have now when you are covering an incident like this. You know, often we, of course, give a lot of weight to law enforcement's first statements and information that they share with us as reporters. But there's an emerging pattern here now, Alex, that we have to just be honest about, which is that in case after case, I mean, you had the governor of Illinois on just moments ago telling you that DHS told inaccurate, false information about people in the Chicago area that later, as this information moved into court systems, fell apart. And so we do have to remain open to the possibility that unless we get additional footage that sheds light on what happens in those initial moments before this, that we can't necessarily take their word as bond in this moment. And in fact, I just did reporting in Houston where
I was going to
DHS,
get to that. Yep.
Yeah, I covered a very violent traffic stop where a group of federal agents went after an undocumented father and his U.S. citizen son. And before DHS knew that I had exclusive video of what actually happened on the scene there, they told me that the father rammed his car into federal agents' cars. I then told them I have video showing the exact opposite. Actually, the agents repeatedly rammed their car into the family's vehicle. And at that stage, my communication with DHS essentially broke down, Alex. They stopped answering the majority of my questions. They had previously been willing to do an interview with me. Then they did not want to meet with me anymore. And so I share that because I think it gives additional context for us and then for our viewers that we have to be very cautious. And as reporters, we have to be honest with you if we're concerned that our sources are not always telling us the truth at the very beginning as a story unfolds.
Rob D'Amico is back with us. Rob, as you hear Antonia describe the experience of that 16-year-old teen in Houston and his, again, a U.S. citizen and his undocumented father, and what she had from video that was exclusive to her, and then DHS turns off the spigot of information and dealing with her. How dangerous is this when you have law enforcement, in this case, federal law enforcement, not willing to discuss any further, apparently, and talk about the facts and whether one side represents one set of facts, the other one has another set of facts they're alleging? What does that do to all of law enforcement and the ability to hold anyone accountable or believe what they're saying?
Well, the trust is gone. And that's the first thing when I was listening to her talk about that. And then them to shut the spigot off because she actually had the receipts, as my kids say. It's just, I always hate when that happens in law enforcement. Law enforcement's so tough. It is a tough job, but you have to have the trust. You have to be able to talk, and you have to, before you talk, you have to have the facts. And then if the facts turn out to be different for some reason that you said something, you have to be transparent and say, this is what happened. This is why we reported something that turned out not to be true. Because once the trust is broken, it's like when we started here, when they first came out with the statement of what happened, because of what happened last time with Ms. Good, and the fact that the Secretary of Homeland Security, her first statements were false. They weren't even accurate. The first thing I did was question the statement, which I've never done before. Like I've never done that where I'm like, well, let's see, because last time they did it, they weren't even accurate to the point of what was happening at the time. And it's one thing, as everyone's talked about, when you first started getting facts in on an investigation, almost every time they turn out to be not correct. It's just people are trying to get information across, and it gets pushed, and the facts don't get. And that's why you don't make a statement. That's why you don't come out and say something until you give it some time and let the people calm down and let the facts come in before you start making comments. That's not happening. And the fact that the official statements that are coming out are in fact not true, now you start questioning every statement that comes out. And it's, as they say, it's a slippery slope. And I think we're down the slope where anything they say, you're going to start questioning and you're not going to believe. And that is just bad for the entire nation, for not just federal law enforcement, for all law enforcement, because you have to trust it. You have to be able to trust that those statements that come out.
Okay. Rob D'Amico, thank you for jumping back in front of the camera. You were with us at the top of the hour as we covered this. And of course, my dear friend, Antonia Hilton, thank you for bringing this story. And I want to let all of you know that you can watch Antonia's full report. It is remarkable. It is Cities Under Siege. It's tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern on the weekend prime time. And for all of you, we will be right back with more on the deadly shooting in Minneapolis. Stay with us here on MS Now.